Transaction. Someone said to Ardabili, "The wonderful relating of the interchanges of masters and disciples serves to illuminate much in my heart. But there is one matter which is dark." "And what is that?" the Sufi asked. "You relate the doings, but not always the occasion. Sometimes you relate the occasion, but not the name of the participants. Such omissions are far from the traditional scrupulous procedure of the men of letters." Ardabili said, "Enchanting friend, if I were to display an angel, would you need to know its original home? If I were to teach you how to drink a goblet of water, would I have to say, 'See, this is the manner of drinking of the Sultan of Khorasan'? Such questions have their own answers, except for the heedless." The fish and the water. A fish is the worst source of information on water. It does not know that water is there when it is present, and only becomes agitated by its absence. Even when deprived of it, the fish does not know what his problem is, only that he feels bad, even desperate. There is a fable about fish. They say that when a fish is scooped out of the water and lies gasping on the bank, he regards his misfortunes as stemming from anything and everything that he can think of. Sometimes he fights, sometimes he gives up. Sometimes he thinks that he should fight the trees, the grass, and even the mud, as authors of his misfortunes. But it is only by accident that he ever flips back into the water. When he does, he thinks how clever he has been. Generally, however, he dies. Fish never see the net or know the hook. At best they blame the worm on the hook, the ropes to which the net is attached. How sad to be a fish! How fortunate to be a man! Mouse Solitary. A mouse one day found his way to the fountain of knowledge. Whoever drinks from it may have his heart's desire, and one extra wish. The mouse drank, and he wished that he could understand the speech of men, if men had speech. When he had spent some time listening to what men said, he used his extra wish to banish his new power. The other mice said to him, "What was so horrible about the speech of men?" At first he could not bring himself even to think of it again, but they pressed him so much that he said, "I do not think that you will believe me, but what I have to say is true. Men actually imagine that God is like them, with human, not mouse-like attributes." The mouse audience was shocked to the core. When some intellectuals among them had recovered from their indignation, they asked, "But are there none who think otherwise?" "There are some, but their theories are as abominable as the rest." "Tell us just the same," clamoured the thinkers, "so that we may have the fullest information on this amazing matter." "Well then, for instance, there are those who imagine that religious terms are in reality derived from states of mind." "Enough!" cried some of the assembled mice. "Such insanity could cause an epidemic of madness. Even the mouse god might not be able to protect us from it." "Enough!" exclaimed others. "For this might give the mouseolators a chance to revive that nonsense called religion, pretending that it has a functional origin." "I told you all at the beginning that it was horrible," said the mouse, who had found his way to the fountain of knowledge. Six Lives in One. There was once a young man who thought, "If I could experience various phases of existence, I would be able to escape from narrow-mindedness. What is the use of being told, 'You will know when you are old,' when I shall be too old to do anything about it?" He met a wise man who said, in answer to these questionings, "You can find out the answer, if you will." "How?" asked the other. "By multiple transformation. Eat certain berries which I will show you, and you can go forward and back in age, or go from being one person to being another." "But I don't believe in reincarnation." "It is not a question of what you believe, but of what is possible," said the sage. So he ate the berries, and desired to become middle-aged. But being of that age had so many limitations that he ate another, and found himself very old. Now that he was old, he wanted to be young again, so he ate another berry. Now he was young again, but as every state has its corresponding degree of knowledge, the experience which he had gained in his 2 transformations fell away from him. But the young man still remembered the berries. Now he determined upon a second experiment. He ate another berry, this time wishing to become someone else. No sooner did he find himself transformed into that person than he realized that change by itself was useless. So he ate another berry and desired to die and to return as himself again. This time, when he found himself restored to his original state, he realized that all that remained with him, anything of any value, was quite different from the experiences which he had so prized in the past as indicative of a change in himself. The sage appeared before him again. He said, "Now that you know that it is not the experiences that you want, but the ones which you need which are significant, you can perhaps start to learn." Opposition. A man named Imami, who was notorious for his almost unbearable criticisms of others, arrived to visit a Sufi teacher one day. "I have dedicated my life to opposing those whose beliefs are untrue, and to struggling against those who preach errors," he said, "and I am generally able to cause them to cry out for mercy. Such is the power of my rightful attacks." The Sufi said, "Have you put yourself in their place before doing this?" "Yes, indeed," said Imami. "I have done so in order to attack them the better, as well as to realize their weaknesses." At this, the Sufi started to vituperate. He shouted and raged and called the luckless Imami every adverse thing under the sun. Imami broke down and begged the Sufi to stop. The Sufi said, "I said what I did so that you could really feel what your opponents feel when they are being assailed. You say that you have put yourself in their place, but I see that when I put you in their place, you really start to feel it." Scientific advance. A moth was fluttering outside a window, having seen a light in a room beyond it. A spider said to it, "When will you moths learn that flames are hot and destructive? You are annoyed at the presence of the glass, but it is the glass which saves you from destruction." The moth laughed. "Grandad," it said, "there are 2 answers to you. First, you are an insect eater, and your advice to insects, however true, can never be accepted by them. Second, we moths of the present generation know more than you think. I happen to know that the delicious light in that room is cold light. There have been scientific developments since your time, you know. I shall enter through this chink and snuggle up to the light." So saying, the moth struggled into the room. There was nobody there to stop him. No spider had made a web which might be a hazard. The moth fluttered around the cold light in an ecstatic dance. But scientific advances had indeed taken place. The light was protected by a film of DDT. Service. Baba Musa Imran lived the life of a rich merchant, although his sayings were accepted as those of a saint. People who had studied with him were to be found as teachers in places as far apart as China, it was said, and Morocco. A certain man of Iran, assuming the garb of a dervish wanderer, found the Baba's home after much searching. He was received kindly and assigned the work of keeping the garden's irrigation channels clear. He stayed there for 3 years, without receiving any instruction in the mysteries. At the end of this time he asked a fellow gardener, "Can you tell me if I may expect to be admitted to the path, and how much longer I might have to wait? Is there anything which I should do in order to qualify for the iltifat, the kindly attention of the master?" The other man, whose name was Hamid, said, "I can only say that Baba Musa has assigned us tasks. Performing a task is a period of service, known as the stage of khidmat. A disciple may not move out of the stage assigned to him. To do so is to reject the teaching. To seek something else or something more may be an indication that one has not, in reality, ever been properly in the stage of service." Less than a year later, the Iranian gardener asked permission to leave, to seek his destiny. Another 30 years passed, and this same man one day found himself in the presence of his former companion, Hamid, who was now Murshid of Turkestan. When Hamid asked if there were any questions, the Iranian stood up and said, "I am your former fellow pupil from the court of Baba Musa Imran. I quit the studies in the phase of khidmat, service, because its relevance to the teaching was incomprehensible to me. You, too, at that time were performing menial tasks and attending no lectures. Can you tell me the particular point at which you began to make progress in the path?" Hamid smiled and said, "I persevered until I was truly able to exercise service. This only happened when I ceased to imagine that menial work was itself enough to denote service. It was then that its relevance to the path became comprehensible to me. Those people who left our Baba did so because they wanted to understand without being worthy of understanding. When a man wants to understand a situation when he only imagines that he is in it, he is sure to be at a loss. He is incapable of understanding, so desiring it is not enough. He is like a man who has placed his fingers in his ears and shouts, 'Talk to me.'" The Iranian asked, "And after you had perfected your service, did the Baba confide the teachings to you?" Hamid said, "As soon as I was able to serve, I was able to understand. What I understood resided in the surroundings prepared for us by the Baba. The place, the others there, the actions could be read as if he had painted a picture of the mysterious realities in their own language." The Tristomachic Survival. Once upon a time there were 3 kinds of people on a certain planet. There were those with 1 stomach, those with 2, and those with 3 stomachs. At first nobody realized that there was any difference between them. They lived in different areas and adopted the food and habits which corresponded best with their stomachic peculiarities. But as they multiplied, their differences became matters of contention. Sometimes the monostomachics prevailed, sometimes the bistomachics, sometimes the tristomachics. Then, with realism and through a desire for equity, they decided to abolish all differences based on stomachs. The result was that people, happily enough, eventually forgot that there were any of these anatomical differences. They now had a unified culture which was completely blind to this detail. Even the technological instruments devised by the people did not register stomach differences. And then a new element crept in. As food supplies increased in quantity and decreased in quality, for unforeseen reasons, the monostomachics and bistomachics could not endure the new diet and began to die out. Because the ancient taboo against knowing anything about stomachs had been established even in the genetic inheritance of the people, nobody could solve the problem, and only the tristomachics survived. Tiger. A deer, in flight before a hunting tiger, paused long enough to call out to a mouse whom he saw sitting quietly beside his hole. "The lord of the jungle approaches. The tiger is in a killing mood. Flee for your life." The mouse nibbled a piece of grass and said, "If you had news of a marauding cat, that would be something which might interest me." Please do this. A certain Sufi was asked, "How can you teach people to move in certain directions when they do not know your language?" He said, "There is a story which illustrates this. A Sufi was in a foreign country where the people knew only one phrase of his language. The phrase was, 'Please do this.' He had no time to teach them more of his language, so whenever he needed anything done, he had to demonstrate it, saying, 'Please do this.' And in that way, everything was done."